Okay, so this is the key to topic 17, and that's on the worksheet called extra number 8. So remember, on this worksheet, you were given three rational equations, and you were asked to solve each of these rational equations. Now, the directions are important. It says this: solve each of the following rational equations. That should be equations, by the way, equations by clearing the fractions using the LCD. Make sure you look at the sample work provided in Canvas. So I'm hoping that you looked at this if you want to receive points. Circle the solution and indicate the LCD. So let's look at the first rational equation. So in number one, we have a plus 1 divided by 5a minus 1 divided by a equals 1. Okay, so you'll notice that in those three, in all of those rational equations, the denominators are monomial factors. Okay, so they're monomials. So they're not a binomial, they're not a trinomial, they're not a polynomial with four terms, they're a polynomial with one term, and so on. This term here, though, if you look at the denominator, that's made up of two factors, the factor a and the factor 5. This denominator is made up of the factor 5. And this denominator you can write as 1 as 1 divided by 1. So that's the denominator with a factor of 1. So remember, your least common denominator must include every factor that you see. Now, since these are monomial factors, it's pretty easy to determine the LCD. It's just every factor. So I see a factor of 5, I have to use it. I see a factor of a, I have to include one. I see another factor of a, I already have it. Make sure it's the least. So don't add another one. Don't say another factor is a and you get a squared. That becomes a common denominator, not the least. You want the least. The next one is a 1. See, that's a 1 here. 1 divided by 1. The denominator is a 1, but 1's a factor of every monomial. And so therefore that's your least common denominator. Okay? Now, here's what you have to do. And that's where this comes in. Solve each of the following rational equations by clearing the fractions using the LCD. So once you find the LCD, here is the next step you had to do. You have to multiply both sides by that least common denominator. Now, since the left side had two rational expressions, I'm going to put that in parentheses. So a plus 1 divided by 5a minus 1 divided by a equals, and then since this only has one rational expression, I'm going to leave it as just 1 without parentheses. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides by 5a by the LCD. All right, so what you do to one side, you do to the other. So mathematically, this is correct. This is a correct statement. Going from here to here is a correct statement. Now, I got to clear the parentheses here. So I'm going to distribute the 5a. Now, many students mess up and they reduce first. You cannot reduce this because then if you reduce incorrectly, so that's an incorrect reducing here, you're going to reduce the 5a's and then you can distribute the 1 and you're going to forget that this also has to be multiplied by the LCD. So be careful. So multiply first. So I'm going to get 5a times the first rational expression minus 5a times the second rational expression equals 1 times 5a is 5a. Now, remember the whole point of multiplying both sides by the LCD is to clear your fractions. You want these denominators, instead of a 5a, you want that to be a factor of 1. Instead of an a, you want that to be a factor of 1. And now we do, though, because 5 divided by 5 is 1, 5 divided by 5 is 1. A divided by a is 1, a divided by a is 1. A divided by a is 1, a divided by a is 1. So you see you have factors of 1s now. And so now here's what you have. 1 times 1 times a plus 1 is a plus 1 minus 5 times 1 is 5 equal 5a. And so now notice you went from a rational equation to a linear equation. And now let's go ahead and combine like terms. So I get a, 1 and a negative 5 is a negative 4. So I get a minus 4 equal 5a. And then let's go ahead and subtract a from both sides. And so combining like terms, a minus a is 0. 0 and negative 4 is a negative 4 equal 4a. Divide both sides by 4. I get my solution to be a equal negative 1. All right, now before we go on, let me just make a point here. In the lessons that you learned for this topic, for topic 17, the lessons that you learned, remember, whenever you have a denominator with a variable expression in it, you've got to find the restrictions. So if and I didn't ask you to do that here, but I do for the other worksheets. If you look at the restrictions, see, if you look at this, now remember these are rational expressions. You cannot divide by 0. So the question is, where is 5a equal to 0? So if I look at 5a and I ask myself 5a and I ask myself where is that equal to 0, I just solve this linear equation. So divide both sides by 5 and I get a to be 0. So the question was, where is 5a equal to 0? Well, when a is 0. It kind of makes sense because 5 times 0 is 0. So my restriction would be that a cannot equal 0. And if I go to the next one, same thing here. See, there's a. When is the denominator 0? When a is 0. All right. So when you find the restriction and then you get your solution, then the next thing you got to ask yourself, well, is this a restriction? And the answer is no. So that should be your solution. Assuming that your work is correct, then you're fine. That's it. Because the solution you got here is not a restriction. All right, so that was number 1. So let's look at number 2. Number 2, we have this equation, this rational equation, number 2. So we have x minus 5 divided by x squared plus 1 divided by x equal 6 divided by x. All right, and so you want to find the least common denominator. Now remember, these are monomial factors in the denominator. And so finding the least common denominator is an easy thing here. So notice that in this denominator, there are 2 factors. See the exponent 2? There are 2 factors of x. So I need 2 factors of x in the LCD. Then I go to the next one. There's a factor of x here. I already have one here. In fact, I have 2 of them, so I'm good so far. I have another one here. I already have a factor of x. So there's your LCD, x squared. Now, before I go on, if I want to find the restriction, remember the restriction is what makes the denominator 0. So the question should become, when is x squared equal to 0? So when is x squared equal to 0? That's the question. Well, I'm hoping you realize that x squared is equal to 0 when x is 0, because 0 times itself is 0. All right, so your restriction would be that x cannot equal 0. And then if you look at this denominator, same thing, right? So where's this denominator equal to 0? When x is 0. When is the denominator equal to 0? When x is 0. So that's the only restriction. 0 makes this denominator 0, it makes this denominator 0, and it makes this denominator 0. Okay, now remember the next thing you do is once you find your LCD, you're going to multiply both sides by the LCD. So here's the next step. Here, if you looked like you were supposed to, if you looked at that sample work that was provided for you, then you know that the next step should look like this. You're going to put, since these are 2 rational expressions here, you're going to put the left side in parentheses, just like this, and then you're not going to rewrite, you're not going to put the right side in parentheses because it's just one rational expression, but now you're going to multiply both sides by x squared, just like this, okay? Now, remember the whole point now, since I put that in parentheses, now I've got to distribute, so I'm going to distribute the x squared, and remember the whole idea is to clear the fractions, right? So meaning that every rational expression has to be multiplied by x squared. So when I distribute, I get that. X squared times that first rational expression, x minus 5 divided by x squared, plus the LCD, x squared, times the second rational expression, equal, and I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite this, 6 over x times the LCD. So notice the LCD is being multiplied by every rational expression. Now the next thing you're going to do is to clear the fractions. So you're going to reduce. So x squareds divide out. You're left with factors of 1. Remember, you want to factor 1 down here. Now notice, be careful here. I have one factor of x here, I have 2 here. So one of these will reduce with this one. So this becomes 1, and this becomes just a 1 factor of x that's left. Same thing here. This becomes 1, this becomes 1 factor of x. But the point is that all of these denominators now have a factor of 1. You've cleared the fractions. So we have x. Now be careful here. This is 1 times x minus 5 is x minus 5. Plus x, this is x now, x times 1 is x, equal 6 times x is 6x. So notice I went from a rational equation to a linear. That is the work you have to show. According to the directions, that's what you had to do. Combining like terms, x plus x is 2x, minus 5 equals 6x. Now, somebody go ahead and subtract 2x from both sides. And so when I do that, I have 0 and a negative 5 is a negative 5 equal 4x. Divide both sides by 4, I get x to be negative 5/4. And notice that it's not the restriction. So assuming I did all this work correct, this is the solution. All right, so that's number 2. Now let's go to number 3. Number 3, I have, number 3, I have 2x minus 3 divided by 7 minus x divided by 2 equals x plus 3 divided by 14. All right, so again, you have this rational expression. So you have this rational equation. It's made up of rational expressions. You have that equal sign, and you want to find the LCD. Now, the difference between 1 and 2 and number 3 is that number 3, you don't have any variables in the denominator. So I'm not going to have any restrictions because the denominator is never 0. This is always 7. This is always 2. This is always 14. So I just want you to know there are no restrictions. There are no restrictions for the denominator. Okay, but the LCD though, 7, 2, and 14, the least common denominator is 14. Make sure you always use the least. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. So I'm going to put this in parentheses. So I get 2x minus 3 divided by 7 minus x divided by 2 times 14 equals x plus 3 divided by 14 times 14. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and distribute. So I get 14 times 2x minus 3 divided by 7 minus 14 times the other rational expression, x divided by 2. And I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this over. X plus 3 divided by 14 times 14. So I want you to notice, though, all of these rational expressions, see this one here is this. This one here is this. This one here is this. All of them is being multiplied by the LCD. The whole point of doing that is to reduce, get these factors in the denominator to be 1. 7 into 7 is 1. 7 into 14 is 2. 2 into 2 is 1. 2 into 14 is 7. The 14s divide out. 14 14 is 1. 14 14 is 1. Now you got to be careful here. See, this is 2 times 2x minus 3. So you need to put that 2x minus 3 in parentheses. So that's 2 times 2x minus 3. Okay? Minus 7 times x, that's minus 7x, equal, and this is x plus 3 times 1, which is just x plus 3. I need a parentheses here because this 2x is being multiplied by 2, and also this negative 3 is being multiplied by 2. So you got to be careful. Don't think that this is just 4x minus 3. It's not. It is 4x minus 6. 4x minus 6, and then minus 7x equal x plus 3. All right, so again, notice I went from a rational equation to this linear equation without any fractions involved now. Combining like terms, 4x and a negative 7x is a negative 3x minus 6 equal x plus 3. Subtract x from both sides. I get negative 4x minus 6 equal, this is 0 here, you're left with 3. Add 6 to both sides. I get negative 4x equal 9. And then divide both sides by negative 4. I get x, negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. 1 times x is x, to be a negative 9/4. Okay? So that is the key to the worksheet on worksheet number 8, extra number 8. Notice though that in each of those cases, the I should kind of quickly show you. In each of those cases, the denominators were all monomial factors. Okay? All right, so that is the key to worksheet extra number 8.